It's good to see all you guys. Thank you for doing your chairs and doing all of that. Eventually, we're going to have marks on the floor where you can set them up and stuff, so it's not as chaotic. But you guys do a great job. Just FYI, very, very pleased with how y'all knocked that out. My name's Coleton again. If you're new or you got here late or something like that, we're in a series and actually finishing up today called "In Our Time." And what we've been looking at just is like as a ministry. As this isn't just like, I want to do youth ministry because every church needs a youth ministry. That's definitely not why I want a youth ministry. I actually want to chase something down, and we've been pursuing something for about 5 years. And seeing some of it happen, and it can get super discouraging when you just chase something down for 5 years and you're still not there, but that's kind of the point. But what we're chasing for real and what we're trying to actually pursue, if you're like, I want to be a part of this ministry, that's great. We're hopefully seeking to help you guys understand, we want you to be lifelong followers, lifelong students of Jesus, not just in high school and not just in middle school, but lifelong students of Jesus. And we believe that the fame and deeds of God, the famous things that are written down in the Bible that made the Bible so famous, we believe that stuff is still possible. And yet, many Christians don't experience it, and so they find themselves bored with their faith and not really sure why they even got into this in the first place. And we just believe that's still possible. I think the scriptures testify to that. And so we want you to experience those things. We don't want you to ever be bored with a man that can rise from the dead. Nobody should be, and yet so many Christians are, and it's such a detriment to the faith and to their faith because it just makes it look like this thing just doesn't matter. But there are people living and understanding this and chasing this down and experiencing God's fame and His deeds in our time and His presence breaking in. They are experiencing those things, and we just want you to do that as well. If you call yourself a follower of Jesus and you're like, no, I'm in, and I want it to be interesting and not boring, then you're one of us. Welcome to the faith. We definitely want that. And so that's what we're looking at. That's what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. And been looking at different ways in which we want our ministry to actually feel like. We call them cultures, but it's like when you walk in the room, when you're part of any of our trips or anything that we do, we want this culture. We want it to just be tangible almost in the air where you can just feel this something about our ministry. And so we talked about those things. We want it to be a gospel-filled culture, a culture of good news where you're experiencing those things, a culture of blessing and belonging where you can just walk in and be a part, even if you're brand new and you don't know anybody, that you can feel like you belong. And again, we're not completely there, and maybe we'll never be, but we are chasing those things down and really trying to press into that. And so if you're like, man, you guys have a culture of belonging, I don't feel like I belong, join the fight, come in this thing with us. We want that for you. We want you to belong, but we recognize that, man, you got a group of people like this, about a quarter of them. So Jesus would talk about the soils and be like, there are 4 soils, one of them is strong. So 3 out of the 4, Jesus says, are not super strong. And so in a group this size, about a quarter of those people, I think the numbers actually rally up, and it actually makes a lot of sense. But if you are someone that's like, no, I want to press into these things, by all means, join with us. We'd love to do that. But one of the cultures we're going to talk about today is one of my favorites. But we want a culture in our ministry, a culture of celebration. We want to actually help you understand that, celebration and partying didn't begin in college with beer. God started celebration and partying, and so there's so much about that I want to talk about and unpack, because I think so much of what we think about God is the exact opposite of who He actually is. But one of the things we want is a culture of celebration. The way that I could define this the best is we want in our ministry, we want people to experience so much joy in our ministry that it leads them to want to worship. Even if they're like, I don't even know if I believe in this Jesus, but there's just so much richness and so much joy here. And our trips, whatever we do, is you experience joy, and it leads you to want to praise something and be like, I just enjoyed that so much. I should praise somebody. You might be an atheist and be like, I would praise God, but I don't believe in Him. That's what we want. We want it to be so rich that you're like, I'm so thankful I was there. I experienced so much joy, and it filled me. Because I think that's what the scriptures testify to. So, culture of celebration, we're going to talk about that tonight. Nehemiah 8:10, it's the teaching text, the launching point for what we're talking about. But if you haven't read the Bible, Nehemiah might be a really strange name to you. Some of you might have the name Nehemiah or know somebody named Nehemiah. It's a Bible name. Nehemiah says this. He says, go and enjoy choice food and sweet drinks. and send some to those who have nothing prepared. This day is holy to our Lord. Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. This is the word of the Lord. A culture of celebration, a place where you experience so much joy that it leads you to worship. That's what we're after. We want a culture of celebration for three reasons, for a number of reasons, but three in particular. A culture of celebration for three reasons in particular. The first is because we want you to view God correctly. Many Christians, and I was one, or many Christians, many people, and I was one of these people, thought of God as like this constantly angry, hateful, and it was based on our experience, right? Like some of you have been in churches or you have backgrounds and stuff where you're like, the people who have taught you about God were the angriest people in the whole world. And it's like, he's great, you should know him. And like, you seem worse mad than a murderer. Why would I ever want to know your God? Like, and that was my experience. Like the Christians that I met before I ever became a Christian was like, y'all are angry and judgmental and hateful and kind of like nerds. No offense to the nerds in the group, because now it's fine. But I was like, you're always sad about stuff or mad about stuff or telling me what you're against. And you're like, oh, you play baseball? Yeah, only non-Christians play baseball. I was like, okay, I'm going to play baseball. Like I never understood why the Christians were so angry with me all the time. And then it turns out it kept me away from Christianity for so long. And to me, I think there's so much of that. I think some of you in the room have this view of God that's been given to you by somebody, and it's just wrong. And so a culture of celebration is something we actually want to repair that and to correctly help you see and view God. We think viewing him correctly is important. Actually, we think viewing anything correctly is important. So just for example, if you don't view something correctly, you normally miss out on something. So for example, I will, and raise your hand, but I'll give $5 to the first person who can tell me what this is. Raise your hand if you think you know. Yeah. Oh, pause. That picture, what is that? He doesn't know. Blurry? It is blurry, but that's not what the picture is of. A coffee cup. Come get your $5. Good job. Awesome. Everybody give it up for Maggie. Oh, it fell out. Well done, Maggie. Coffee cup. All right, help me out, though. Help me out. Why didn't you know what it was? Blurry. Why didn't you know what it was? Okay, so you did want the money. You wanted the money? You did want the money? You wanted the money. Okay. So here's my point on this. It's not that you didn't want the money, that you didn't receive. You missed out, not because you actually didn't want to miss out. You wanted to receive, but you missed out. Why? Because your view was imperfect. You viewed it imperfectly, and it's on purpose that it's imperfect. She just happened to see through all of the guys and all the rest of it, so that's awesome. All right, next one. Somebody tell me what this is. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. No. No. A balloon? You were the closest, but no. You're closer. Not it, though. A bowling ball. Boy, we're getting really close. That's not it. A Christmas ham. That's it. I'm kidding. That's not it. Yeah, Aiden. A turkey. No, we're getting further away from the truth at this point. You've already guessed, woman. Yeah. What is it? A donut. No. A football. That a boy. Hey, I'm going to give you $1 now and $5 later, and we'll trade. You ready? All right. All right. Again. All of you wanted to receive the $5. As soon as Maggie got it, it was like, oh, he's actually giving out money for real. I'll hit you up with $4 later. All of you wanted to see it. Why couldn't you tell me what it was? Because your view was imperfect. You viewed it wrongly, and you missed out on the money that you could have received. All right, last one. What is this arrow pointing to? It's pointing to a dot on the map. What building is this? That the arrow is pointing to a dot on the map, and that dot is a building. What building is that? Yes. What? No. It's not this building. Oh, okay. Yeah. Nope. What? No, it's not Bass Pro Shop. No. The Peabody. Okay, I'm gonna narrow it down. It's somebody's house in this room. Somebody's house. Huh? No. No. Nobody knows where Hannah lives. It's so far away. Clark. Libby's house. Libby's house. That's crazy. I can't believe you got it, dude. Come on up. Get your $5. Well, you get $1, and I'll hit you up with 4 later. Well done. Well done. All right. It was that. I mean, it's technically Gibbs' house, but I mean, like, yeah, Libby lives there too. So now everybody knows where Reese and Libby live. Good luck getting there. All right, but here's my point. Here's my point, and stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with me. The point is, like, that's a terrible view to determine whose house that is. I mean, like, you could see all of North America and some of Canada, which is like, what is even Canada? You know, like, it's just a terrible view. And the reason some of you missed out is because you're just looking at something that's a terrible view. To me, listen, it works the exact same way with God. Some of you miss out and you keep him at arm's length and you don't want anything to do with him, and it's not because of him. It's because your view of him that's maybe been given to you by another church or by somebody else or by the culture, the media, or you just have thoughts of him. Your view of him is incorrect. Your view of him is bad, and therefore your experience with him is bad as well. This happens all the time. If you think that he's angry and hateful towards you and has nothing for you, then you're like, then I don't need you at all. But if you think that he actually has riches available to you, that he loves you, he wants to be near you, he wants to repair things that are broken in your life, help you with difficult things that you find difficult in your life, that he actually wants to step in and actually help you in those ways, if you think of him and view him that way, all of a sudden the dynamic changes quite a bit. And to me, we want you to view God correctly because we actually want you to experience what you're missing out on right now. And if you don't view him correctly, you are going to miss out on those things. And so a culture of celebration is so that when you experience joy here, when you experience anything good, you just won some money. And I was like, oh, that feels really good to win. Some of you played against Ben doing the game. We don't just do games because it's a youth ministry and we got to do games because the kids like games. That's not why. We don't just do free food out here and all the stuff out there just because it's like, oh, it's just part of it. Like, no, all of this is based on something. We want you to receive free things because Jesus wants to offer us free things. We want you to experience joy out there when you're playing games. We want you to win things in here. We want you to do that because when you experience any kind of that joy, it helps you to view this is exactly what God is like. We don't steal from you here. We don't rob you of your stuff. You know why? Because God's not like that. And if you left church going like, I think they robbed me blind, their God must be like that. Like, we don't want that for you. That's not who he is. And so the things that we do when you experience joy here, you're just catching a glimpse, just a small flicker of like what he's actually like. And the reason we want to celebrate you, the reason Sean brought up the idea a long time ago that was just a pain in my side of writing you guys birthday cards, which we love. We're so thankful to do that. But it was like, I was like, yes, a culture of celebration. The reason we do that and you get a piece of mail that says that we're thinking about you, we recognize your birthday, is because God is always thinking about you. He always he knows your birthday. He was there when you were born. He actually formed you in your mother's womb. Like, he was present. And so when you're like, somebody thought of me, somebody noticed me, we do a culture of celebration so that you can actually go like, this is what he's actually like. These things aren't random. We want you to view him correctly because if you don't, you'll miss out on what he's actually about. And I think for many of us, man, our view of him is so messed up. Dallas Willard says this. He says, we will never fully understand God until we believe that he's the most joyful being in the universe. We will never fully understand him unless we begin believing he's the most joyful being in the joy began in him, and it did not begin in us. Joy began in him, and we only receive it if it comes from it. If you ever experience joy in your life, it's because he gave that to you right then and there. It is just a gift that's free for you. You're like, well, I don't even believe in that God. It's like, that's fine. He doesn't mind that. He's going to give you joy anyways because it's who he is. It's what he's about. That's all. And he's like, oh, I got to give it. It just spills over onto some folks. We will never understand him unless we believe that he's the most joyful being in the universe. And maybe for the first time, some of you guys are hearing that. Like, I've never heard that about God. I thought God was the most angry, critical, judgmental person in the universe. I'm sorry that you feel that way and that you heard that, or maybe that's been your experience. That's not who he is. God is the most joyful being in the universe, and joy begins in him, it ends in him, and he gives it freely out to people. And so whenever you experience it, it's something that's coming from him, so that you would be like, what is that feeling that I love? And it's like, oh, that something comes from this God who's actually joyful. So we want you to view God correctly. That's why we want a culture of celebration. Second, We want you to experience, again, what God is actually like. We want you to actually experience what he's actually like, not just things that come from him, but to experience what he's actually like. If you read the Bible, and all of you should, especially if you don't know what you believe about Jesus or all the rest of it, is if you have a bad view of God, you're like, I don't think God's that way, read the Bible. I promise you, from beginning to end, what you'll get to is like he's constantly celebrating at the beginning, all the way through, and at the end. He's just one big He's like all these quotes say that he's a party animal, and his followers are party animals because they get it from him. Like if you go to the next slide here. In Genesis, he celebrates every day of creation. He says he did this and did this, and then he looked at it and said, this is good. Did this, looked at it, and said it was good. Every day of creation. Then he creates a marriage between Adam and Eve, and so you have a marriage celebration right at the beginning. Just spoiler alert, once you get to the end, there's another marriage celebration. It begins with a celebration, it ends in a celebration. This is the Bible. All the way through. If you get to Exodus, God saves the people out of Egypt. And he's like, hey, I saved you. You didn't follow me correctly in order to earn my salvation. I just saved you. And now here's what I want you to do to remember it. And they're like, here we go. We're about to get some rules. We're about to get some stuff. And he's like, here's what I want you to do to remember that I saved you. I want you to throw a crazy party for 2 weeks. Like, that's the answer. Here's what I want you to do. Throw a huge get-together, huge party. Slaughter some fatty meat, have some barbecue, and get some sweet drinks and do this thing. That's actually happening. The teaching text in Nehemiah 8:10. He says, go enjoy choice food and sweet drinks. This isn't actually in Exodus. This is later on when they come back to the land, and he's like, hey, another great day. I brought you back into this space where you're in a relationship with me again. I don't want you to cry, because they all start weeping. They're sad that they disobeyed the Lord. And he's like, don't cry. I don't want you to cry. I want you to celebrate with fatty barbecue brisket. They couldn't have pork. And sweet drinks, and I want you to celebrate and enjoy it, because the joy that he's going to give you is going to be strength for you. The joy that he gives you, the joy from God, is going to strengthen you. And so that's what he's doing. He does the same thing in Exodus. Exodus in the law is basically like, throw another party, throw another party, throw another party. Make sure you throw another party. Their whole year was to be ordered around what God had done. And it's like, hey, I know that your year normally starts on this month. We're going to change that. I did something really amazing. So let's mark it out and change the day of the first of your year to this day when I actually brought you out of Egypt. Make sure you remember it, and make sure you remember it with a killer party for 2 weeks. Go ham, go after it, remember what I did for you. Mark it with celebration. And then he gets to the Psalms, and the Psalms are basically just songs and praise and celebration. Jesus in the Gospels, he comes in Luke and he says, I've come to announce good news to the poor. And then he goes and he's like constantly bringing celebrations into people's lives where it's like, I can't walk. It's like, now you can. I can't see. It's like, boop, now you can. I can't hear. It's like, now you can. These people were rejoicing around Jesus because it's like, all of my issues and all of my brokenness, what do I do with that? And he's like, don't worry about that. I'll fix that. Just constant celebration. And it says, I've come to announce good news to the poor, sight to the blind, freedom to the captives, and all the rest of it. And then he goes on, and it says that he took on the cross because of the joy that was set before him. He took on the cross. Early church, you get to Acts, and it's the early church receives the gift of the Holy Spirit. There's a celebration there. People are added to their numbers. They're celebrating the Lord's Supper. They're celebrating baptisms. They're feasting together constantly. They're constantly in each other's houses, eating together and celebrating together. You get to Revelation at the end of the Bible, and the followers of Jesus join in another wedding feast, and it's the wedding feast of the Lamb. And it's like, what is God pointing us to? What is his end goal? He's like, well, his end goal is eventually to get to a point where we eat together in this crazy feast celebration, where we're celebrating that victory over death, victory over Satan, victory over all evil and all sin and all the bad things, victory over all that. And what we're going to do to celebrate it and to mark it and say that it's done is we're going to throw a crazy party. That's the answer. All through the Bible, like he's just like... he has to be confused. Like, I don't know where people got the idea that I'm like, I can't wait for them all to go to hell. Like, I don't know like how we ever got to that. And it's like, from beginning to end, all I'm seeking to do is to lead them into joy and to bring those things into their lives. That's all I'm trying to do. Consistently. And again, this is why we want you to experience what God is like. This is why we play games. This is why we do funny costume nights and we celebrate you. This is why we don't just do those things. It's like, I don't know, we got nothing to do. We want you to experience joy so that you experience what he's actually like. That's why we do those things. Third, we want you to experience the joy that God actually gives. So, we want you to, just to refresh, I'm going to give this to you quickly. We want you to view God correctly. We want you to actually experience what he's like, and then we want you to experience the joy that he gives. Nehemiah 8, again, says that the joy of the Lord is your strength. The joy that God gives you strengthens you. It carries you through life. And y'all know this. If you've ever, anybody, Meredith, where you at? Where's Meredith? When you were practicing the violin, it was difficult, I'm assuming. Right. But there's some joy in it at the end of like, as soon as I've learned this, I get to actually play this and I know what I'm doing. If there's not that joy at the end, this gets pretty tedious. And it's the same with football. Anybody play football? Okay. If you're practicing, like, who's like, I just love wind sprints and like almost passing out. Like nobody's like, I just want to crush wind. I never want to play a game. I just want to sprint till I throw up every day. No one does that. But it's the joy of the game that's coming, which is what makes the practice endurable even when it's really challenging. It's consistent. Joy actually strengthens you to keep doing the hard thing. And so what Nehemiah is saying is like, it's the joy of the Lord that's your strength. The joy that God gives you strengthens you and actually gives you life to endure in a fallen world, in a broken world. And so we want you to experience the joy that God gives. This is why God calls us. He's like, I want to lead you into joy consistently. Like, so go to the next slide. God is always trying to give you and lead you toward joy. That is what he's after. If you're like, what does he want with my life? He's always trying to give you and lead you to joy. You're like, I don't think that's right. He's like telling me I can't sin anymore. Right, because sin leads to death. He wants to lead you to joy and give you joy. That's why he says, like, hey, I'd stop doing the thing where you're actually harming yourself. I'd stop that. That's not leading you to joy. It's not bringing you joy. God is always trying to give you and lead you to joy. 3 ways that we see this. The reason he is doing this, he's trying to lead us and give us joy. 3 ways that he actually calls us to do this. He's like, I want you to experience this, and so I'm going to command you to do a couple of things. The first, he's like, I command you to say thank you to me. He commands you to thank him. We think it's like, oh, man, my parents used to say that to me. That always made me say thank you. But thank you, actually, when he commands us to be grateful towards him, to do everything with gratitude, thank you actually rewires our brains. And if we say thank you to a person who gave us something, it helps us to remember, if I need something again, that's the person that gave it to me. If we refuse to say thank you to a person, we'll forget that they ultimately gave us a thing. And so we won't go back to them when we need something else because we've forgotten that they ever gave it to us in the first place. Thank you rewires our brain to go like, oh, where did I get that gift last time? Oh, I got it from him. And so now I know I can go back to him in order to receive it. And so him in commanding us to thank him isn't like, say it, I need to be thanked, otherwise I'm insecure about myself. God's not insecure. He doesn't need your thank you to feel better, like, oh, God, finally, they love me. Like, no, he doesn't need any of that. He's like, I'm asking you to say thank you to me so that when you need something more, you'll remember who gave this to me the first time. And it's marked in our heads. It's like, oh, it was him. He's the one that gives good gifts. He's the one that does those things. And so, yes, he commands us to thank him. It's bigger than that. This quote here from the Emotional Intelligence book. These are scientists, okay? This is what they say. It says, in the book, it says, the real brain antidepressant is gratitude. This is why God commands us to, please give me thanks. I promise you it's doing more for you than for me. The real brain antidepressant is gratitude. Gratitude boosts levels of serotonin and dopamine. Those are the chemicals that make you feel good. These are the brain's happy chemicals and the same chemicals targeted by antidepressant medications. If you're on antidepressant medication, what they're trying to target is what gratitude does for you naturally, okay? God wired it in your brain to give you something that fights sadness and fights against the brokenness. He commands you to do something that actually is supposed to lead you to joy. The striking thing about gratitude is that it can work when things aren't even going well for you. That's because you don't actually have to feel spontaneous gratitude in order to produce chemical changes in your brain. You just have to force yourself to think about something in your life that you appreciate. This train of thought activates your brain and makes you feel happier. God calls you to say thank you. Because even if you're like, I'm not super thankful about waking up this morning, even when you say thank you, the gratitude does something in you, releases chemicals in your brain that actually make you feel happier. He calls you to this, not to command you and try to be domineering. He calls you, he's like, I'm trying to lead you to joy. So say thank you to me. I'm trying to lead you to joy. Second, God commands us to worship him. Commands us to worship him. It seems weird. C.S. Lewis struggled with this a lot, and he says this. He's like, what I realized is that we delight, well, actually, I talked about this last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. Emma, where you at? Emma, there's so many Emmas in our group. Lambert, where's Emma Lambert? She's right there. When she won, she was playing cups, and she beat Micah, beat Micah. And everybody celebrated. The reason you celebrate it is because when something good happens and you're excited, to just walk away and act like nothing happened isn't what we naturally want to do. There's something about winning that makes us want to throw our hands up and start banging them together. It's like, I don't know what it is, but I want to high-five my neighbor just because someone else, my team won. There's just something about that naturally happens. And what C.S. Lewis discovered is like we delight to praise what we enjoy because the praise not merely expresses our joy, but it actually completes our enjoyment. When something good happens and we go, yes, and we do that, and we fist pump in the air, we high-five somebody, it's not just expressing the joy, it completes the joy. It helps us to experience more. And so he says it's not out of compliment that people in love keep on telling one another how beautiful they are. It's not out of compliment that Mac posted on Instagram about the best 2 years of his life are with Kayla. He's not just doing that just to be like, all right, I did it, now it's over. It's like, no, it completes the joy. There's something in their relationship that he wants to. Sorry, bro. But I mean, I think it's great. I'm sorry, you're turning beet red. My bad. It's public. It's on Instagram. It's not like it's not there for everybody. It's not like I saw a secret. But like, there's a reason. Like, why do we do that? And it's like, because the joy that I feel isn't complete until it's expressed. We know this because we do it naturally. And when God says, I want you to worship me, what he's doing is I'm commanding you to worship me, but realistically, I'm commanding you in worshiping me, you will enjoy me. And so, yes, I want you to sing to me. Yes, I want you to kneel and pray to me. Yes, I want you to worship me. But it's so that you'll actually experience the joy of knowing me. I'm not calling you to do something because I'm like, I need praise, otherwise I don't feel good about myself. It's not that. I want you to enjoy me. And so when he is commanding us to glorify him, he's inviting us to enjoy him. Secondly on this, so that's a Christian's response to worship, okay? I have a non-Christian's response to worship. This is David Foster Wallace. You can look this up online. The man said this and then went and killed himself a couple of weeks later. It's a really, really difficult quote to some extent because he's talking about worship, but he's not a Christian at all. He's not talking about that at all. But he talks about the importance of worship, and this is what he says. He says, everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And the compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship is that pretty much everything else or anything else you worship will eat you alive. He said, if you worship money and things, you will never feel like you have enough. Worship your body and beauty, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally grieve you. If you worship power, you will end up feeling weak and afraid, and you will need even more power over others to numb you to your own fear. Worship being seen as smart, and you will end up feeling stupid, a fraud, always on the verge of being found out. When God commands us to worship him, he's trying to help us to experience what's in him. Whatever we choose to aim our affection and our worship at, whatever we do that to, it will eventually give us everything it has. This is why Satan wants Jesus' worship. He's like, I want to give you all of myself by you giving me all of yourself. And Jesus is like, no. I'm not doing any of that. Whatever we choose to turn our worship towards, whatever that thing is filled with, is ultimately what we will be filled with. And so if that thing is empty and has nothing to offer you, what you will then be filled with is emptiness and feel like you're alone and feel like you can never be satisfied and feel like I just worship this thing and it's never given me exactly what it wants because it's filling you with what it has. It has emptiness to offer, and if you're worshiping it, it's filling you with emptiness and you feel empty. This is why God is like, worship me. I am filled with joy. I am filled with peace. I am filled with love. I want to fill you with those things. If you worship me, I will fill you with everything that you actually long for. You will be filled with me instead of something else. They're empty. I'm full. I long to pour out of who I am into you. Worship me instead. Again, he wants us to experience. He's trying to lead you into joy. Third thing is he says, draw close to him. I command you to draw close to me. Psalm 16, I think it's 11, says this. It says, in his presence, in God's presence, draw close to me because in my presence is fullness of joy. At my right hand are pleasures forevermore. Why do you command me to draw close to you, God? It's like, what? Because there's fullness of joy in my presence. There's at my right hand are pleasures forevermore, everything that you're longing for. Like, yes, I'm commanding you. Please come close to me. Do that. I'm commanding you. But I'm doing it because I want to lead you into joy. Now, if you're here, and you're just like, I don't think this about God, then you're in good company. I didn't either. I mean, for so long it was like, I don't want anything to do with this God that I've been presented by somebody else. But it was when I realized it's like, oh, he's filled with goodness. He's filled with kindness. He's filled with joy. then I ultimately experienced those things poured into my life for the last 18 years. I'm just telling you it's available, but I don't know where you're at in your faith. I don't know where you stand with Jesus and all the rest of it. All I'm telling you is whatever your picture is, whatever your view of him is ultimately what you're receiving. If you view him a certain way, you're getting that back to yourself. And my encouragement to you is to view him correctly. To view him this way. This is who he is. I didn't make this stuff up. This is from the Bible. I'm not making this up. This is who he is. And so if you're like, I just don't believe that's who he is, then that's your belief, but that's not right. That's your view, and your view is causing you to miss out. I'm just telling you that's not who he is. He's far better, and this is why we want a culture of celebration, so that when we're celebrating and when we're having a great time, it's like, why are we doing this? It's because this is what he's like. We're experiencing just a piece, just a portion of what God's heart actually is. I want to close with this. Has anybody ever studied the science of laughing? Okay, they don't know why we laugh. There's no evolutionary ideal of like, here's exactly why laughter was a thing. It helped save us from the bears. No, nobody. We don't know. It's like, I mean, it helps you connect with some people, and then maybe that's the thing, but like, muscles make sense because you can fight off bears. Laughing actually renders you useless if you're really laughing, and the bears eat you. There's no reason for this. It doesn't make any sense. And to me, I was like, what a beautiful thing that God gave us the science, just this beautiful random thing. And what all these psychology, go just Google it, the science of laughing. All of them are like, we're not totally sure what causes laughter. It's not really, they were like, is it a certain joke? Is it a certain type of joke? What is it? They don't really know. They're just like, all we know is that you can't fake it. You can fake a laugh, but you can't fake like an actual thing where you're on the ground. You're like, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. You can't fake that. That happens, and it's like your brain takes over for a second, and it launches into this thing that you can't understand. But God has given it to me. I'm not an evolutionary person. I don't believe in evolution like that. And so I think that God gave us this because of all the different things that it does in my mind, or in our minds. But look, I have a quote here, and I don't have it on the screen because I forgot to put it in there. But this is what the scientists know. We don't know a lot, but here's what we know. We know that laughing enhances cardiovascular function. It fortifies our immune system. We also know that there's positive benevolent humor. And what they say is like when you laugh with other people, it actually does more for your brain and your body than to laugh at somebody. Laughing at someone doesn't do for you what laughing with people ultimately does for you. We know that it says, our brains seem particularly affected by emotionally rewarding and authentic happy signals. These include muscle workout, improved respiration. And so this is what it does. It's a muscle workout because you tighten up when you laugh. It improves your respiration. It decreases your stress. Your anxiety and your mood improves. It builds resilience. Laughter therapy has been shown to function similarly to antidepressants by raising serotonin levels in the brain. It's a crucial neurotransmitter vital for feelings of well-being and calmness. Like all these different, like laughing does all this stuff. And it's like, and we don't even know why it exists. It doesn't even make any sense. It's something that's necessary, and yet it's a healing thing that God has put in us because he is filled with joy, and he longs to pour out. He created this so that you could ultimately experience a random healing from what laughing actually does, and so that it actually does something and brings you joy in your life. The joy that he longs to give you and bring you into is something that he wants to help you experience. He's trying consistently to show you, this is who I am. I'm not the angry God that you were presented, I promise. I'm better than that. And I want you to experience what I'm actually like. And just know that I'm constantly trying to lead you to joy. And so for a response, instead of doing a song, I want us to watch a comedian. And so we're going to watch a comedian. I hope it's funny for you. I looked at it for a bit, tried to find a clean one. Most of the funny comedians aren't clean, y'all. Just FYI, if you're ever wondering. But I found one that was okay. And if you don't laugh, hey, man, that's on you. You're reducing the healing properties in your own life. But here's what we got. I'm going to pray first, and then we'll go from there. But let me pray. I'll pray after. Watch this thing. I like to drink iced coffee with milk. And I told a story. I went into a Starbucks inside a Target. I ordered